Excelsior, true believers! You are about to embark upon a journey, a trip to the 70s and 80s when mighty Marvel Comics ruled over all. The Defenders, Doctor Strange, the Champions, Deathlock, the Submariner, the Incredible Hulk, Killraven, the Son of Satan, the Macabre Man-Thing, and all your other Bronze Age favorites every week appearing on Defenders Dialogue. Now here are your guides, Christopher Golden and Brian Keene.
Excelsior, true believers. Welcome back once again to Defenders Dialogue. I am Brian Keene, flying solo this week. Chris is off. We apologize. We know it has been several weeks since you got a new episode of Defenders Dialogue. That is because we have had a lot going on, folks, both publicly and behind the scenes. We had hoped, both of us, to record a show for this week, but I'm free. I'm here. You're stuck with me. So hopefully Chris will be back with us next week. This week, we continue our deep dive into Marvel's The Man-Thing. We're going to be covering issue number 9 and 10, starting with issue number 9, written by Steve Gerber, Mike Ploog on art. Of course, this is now the classic team that everybody thinks of when they think of 1970s Man-Thing. The title for issue number 9 is Death Watch, and we open with the Man-Thing staring over a shack in the middle of the swamp. Now, this shack is something I'm no stranger to, and I'm sure a lot of our Appalachian listeners are no strangers to. You find these shacks in rural Pennsylvania, in rural West Virginia, in rural North and South Carolina, and of course in the Florida Everglades too. It is a home of poverty. It's very clear that somebody poor lives here, and we see an old lady and a dog outside of that shack, and the Man-Thing is watching them. We find that the lady's name is Mabel Torque, and the dog's name is Dog, D-A-W-G, Dog. And she's doing her laundry in an old-fashioned wash tub, and the dog, sensing that the Man-Thing is out there in the swamp, howls. And Mabel is very mean to it, tells it to shut up and berates it and belittles it. And we find out that the dog belongs to her husband, Zeke, and that Mabel is jealous of the dog. She dislikes the dog strongly, and she's abusive to the dog. So this ends with Mabel throwing wet wash at the dog. Dog runs off, and the Man-Thing, as we've seen established in previous issues, Man-Thing doesn't like it when you hurt a dog. So he comes creeping up behind her, drips down on her. She turns around, she freaks out, she screams. Just some great work here by Mike Ploog. The sound of her screams alerts her husband, Zeke, which is short for Ezekiel. He comes running out of the house with a shotgun, sees the Man-Thing looming over his wife, and he says, "What kind of critter is that? Ain't never seen it in 20 years living in this swamp." And, she begs him to shoot the Man-Thing, so he does. As we know, of course, bullets have no effect on everyone's favorite muck monster. He goes wandering off into the swamp. And Mabel is very weakened by the confrontation. So Zeke picks her up, carries her into the shack, lays her in bed, and she tells him that she feels a heart attack coming on, that he has to get her a doctor. So he decides he will head into town to get her a doctor, but he's going to leave Dog there to watch over her. And Mabel wants none of that. She says, "No, I don't want him. Get him out of my sight. Scat, you mongrel." And she chases Dog out of the house. Zeke climbs into his boat and he tells Dog She don't mean it, dog. She's just upset is all. You stay here. So dog listens to his owner. He stays. And Zeke heads off into the swamp with the man-thing following him. Mabel, realizing that dog is still there, just begins to berate him again. She tells him, I hate you, dog, more than anyone or anything on earth. I hate you. If I had the strength, I'd jump out of this bed right this minute and squeeze the life out of you. And as she says this, Mabel has a heart attack, slumps back on the bed. Dog, terrified by what happened, runs off into the swamp, finds Zeke on the boat, and climbs up with him. So the two are together, but the horror has only begun because a long dead tree emits a low, rasping moan as its branches snake wildly outward and snatches Zeke off the boat. This is some great work here by Mike Plug. For those of you who listen to Defenders Dialogue on YouTube, I'm going to make sure I put these panels up and show you. This looks like something out of Frank Baum's Oz. I mean, it's a tree with a face and a nose and eyes. And I remember this as a kid. I can't say it was scary, but it was cool to look at back then. And it's cool to look at as an adult. Of course, the man-thing, seeing this man and this dog in trouble from this demonic tree, or I should say this tree that is inhabited by a demonic presence, he swings into action. He attacks the only way he knows how, with all the raw power in his lumbering, misshapen form. And he rips the tree up out of the swamp and tosses it into the water. And Zeke says, did you see that dog? He saved our lives. He says, I'm mighty obliged to you, big feller, me and dog both. And he apologizes for shooting him earlier. But as the man-thing lumbers off, the tree is not dead. It bursts up out of the swamp water, and now it grabs dog, pulls him out of the boat. It's trying to kill the dog. So the man-thing comes rushing back and rips the tree apart, at which point it seems to explode, and red smoke escapes from it and goes snaking off into the swamp. This red smoke veers away towards the land and then possesses, That's the one thing doing this by myself. I don't have Chris to play off of, and I am just getting over a cold. It's not COVID. It's just a cold. But my throat's getting a little dry here, so I apologize for that. But the smoke inhabits a sleeping alligator. The alligator wakes with a start, and it slithers off the bank and beneath Zeke's boat, and then it emerges and it attacks Zeke and dog. You can guess what happens. The man-thing shows up, kills the alligator. The red smoke leaves the alligator and takes off again. Zeke is, wondering about this. He tells the man-thing, he says, I don't know why this is happening. I don't have any enemies. Heck, I don't even have any friends. He says it's just been him and Mabel and dog living out there in the swamp for 20 years together. They come across a bunch of skeletons and irons, and Zeke suggests that perhaps this was a bunch of escapees from a chain gang. The smoke inhabits the skeletons, and then we get a gorgeous double splash page from Mike Plug, straight out of the old Sinbad the Sailor and Jason the Argonaut movies from the 70s. We see a bunch of skeletons rise up to attack Zeke and dog. The man-thing jumps into the fray. Dog jumps into the fray. They're both fighting the skeletons, but one of the skeletons gets poor Zeke, and it's choking the life out of him. And as the man-thing smashes them to bits, the smoke then inhabits the snakes of the swamp. And the final page we see here is the man-thing cradling Zeke's limp form, dog looking up at the two of them, and they are surrounded by possessed snakes, which leads us immediately into Man-Thing issue number 10. Still the same creative team. This issue is called Nobody Dies Forever. The snakes attack. And we get several pages worth here of the Man-Thing just swarmed. I mean, literally swarmed by all kinds of swamp snakes. He defeats them all. When he reemerges, he finds a gorgon. If you don't know what a gorgon is, think of Medusa. Medusa was a gorgon. A female figure with snakes for hair, old crone-looking thing. This gorgon has an oddly familiar face, the face of Mabel Torque, Zeke's wife. And the gorgon says to the Man-Thing, so you still live, still seek to keep me from wreaking the vengeance that is rightfully mine. The swamp, my husband, this insufferable dog, they killed me. Do you hear? They took my life, robbed me of my youth and my beauty, and now I shall destroy all they hold dear. The dog shall die at my hand. But, the Man-Thing is having none of this. So he uproots a tree and he charges the gorgon and smashes it to bits. And at that moment, Mabel, surprisingly, wakes up in the shack. And she realizes that, she was having a dream. Her heart gave out. She had a heart attack. She did, in fact, have a heart attack. But that then all the jealousy, all the hatred she had for Dog went out of her body somehow, out there into the swamp. We then get Zeke giving the Man-Thing the backstory, which I've already given you, how they moved to the swamp 20 years ago and they had a nice life together. But that after a while, Mabel got tired of missing the niceties of the city. And that one day Zeke found a little puppy dog and he thought that maybe that would make things better, but it didn't. Mabel hated Dog. She was very jealous of the time that Dog and Zeke spent together. So he's telling him this story as they get to town to look for the doctor. They come across Ed's truck stop and Zeke goes inside. Now keep in mind, Zeke has not interacted with other people other than his wife for 20 years. So he goes inside and he asks the three locals. He says, I need help finding a doctor. My wife's sick. Can you help me? And the owner of the diner, kind of rude, he says, does this look like a hospital, buddy? There's a phone over there in the corner. Help yourself. So Zeke goes to the phone. Now keep in mind, it's the 1970s. Cell phones don't exist. It's a payphone. And he needs a nickel, and he doesn't have one. He asks if one of them can lend him a nickel. And the three locals just start making fun of him. They think he's crazy. Zeke gets rough with them. They get rough back. They toss him outside. But the Man-Thing is there to save him, and the Man-Thing makes short work of the locals, at which point the owner has a change of heart, gladly gives Zeke a nickel, offers him a free cup of coffee. Zeke wants none of that. He calls the doctor, gives the doctor directions, and then he and Dog and the Man-Thing start home. They reach the shack. They realize they've made it, but they see Mabel out on the front porch where she's crawled. She's unconscious again, and the red smoke pours out of her body, looking like the gorgon, and it attacks. It's an elemental attack. This is the Red Witch waves her arms wildly about, and a chill, biting wind gusts forth, drowning out Dog's continued howling with its own eerie wail. Zeke asks Mabel, why are you trying to kill me? And the witch says, who cares about you? This is what I want, this yowling, yapping fool of a dog. And she snatches up Dog, and she's about to kill him when the Man-Thing once again lumbers forward and saves the day. And then we get an all-out battle between this elemental force and the Man-Thing himself. The smoke loops and swirls about him, feeding on his own suffering, rejoicing in the feast until it can consume no more, at which point it explodes upon him like a glutton's gaseous gut. Yes, that is a real sentence that Steve Gerber wrote, it explodes upon him like a glutton's gaseous gut, hurling back all the torment it has absorbed, redoubling his anguish in a single burst. And he cannot even give voice to the terrible suffering, for he lacks the apparatus to form speech. He can only lie, spent and smoking in the mud, perhaps alive and perhaps not. Well, Zeke is sure that the man-thing is dead. He runs over to Mabel's body. The smoke rises from the man-thing's form behind him and starts creeping closer. Mabel gains consciousness, and she says, Zeke, you got to listen close. I figured out what happened. While I was dead, my hate and jealousy got away from me and took on a life of their own. And she tells him she has to die or it will get him. Now, I'm not sure that makes sense within the context of the story. It seems that when Mabel died the first time, that's when this form was released. How is her dying a second time going to stop it? I don't know. Let's read on and find out. The demon shows up. It makes a play for Dog, but Dog has had enough of this nonsense. Dog attacks, springs right into the demon's hands. The two of them are fighting. The demon flings the dog into the shack. It looks like Dog is going to be dead too. And with that, the demon vanishes. And yes, Dog is dead. But Zeke says maybe he died happy, Mabel, protecting you and me. That's all he ever wanted from life. And Mabel is crying. She says she's so ashamed by the cruelty. 40 minutes later, the doctor arrives at last. And as he does, he sees the man-thing lumbering off into the swamp. And he says, good Lord, look at that. And Mabel says, he's alive, Zeke. And the doctor says, what is that thing? And Zeke says, he's not a thing, Doc. He's a good friend of the family, same as our dog was. He ain't a human being, neither was Dog, but let me tell you something. Either one of them had more soul than any 10 people I know. We then get a footnote from Steve Gerber. He says, this story is dedicated to the memory of Margot's Napoleon. So his friend Margot had a dog, Napoleon, who died. And Steve Gerber wrote these two issues to commemorate that dog. Something I've done myself, something I'm sure Chris has done himself as well. So there you have it. Man-Thing issues 9 and 10. Before I go, I want to remind you, our engineer is Matt Wilderson, who is an amazing author in his own right. Go to Amazon.com, type Matt Wilderson, Wildasin, in the search bar, and his stuff will pop up. If you enjoy this program, which is commercial free, then support us by supporting Matt. That's all we ask. Buy one of his books today. Next week, like I said, hopefully Chris will be back. We will be covering Giant Size Man-Thing issue number 2. Until then, Excelsior, true believers. Brian Keene signing off.
Defenders Dialogue. You can listen to this episode and all previous episodes for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play Music, and wherever else podcasts are available. Defenders Dialogue is written and produced by Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Our theme music is by Xander Harris. Our engineer is Matt Wilderson. Check out his books on Amazon.com.